What really happens when a pope dies? Secrets of the Vatican reveal. There are moments in human history when heaven seems to pause and the earth watches in silence. One of those moments is the death of a pope. Most people see the headlines, they hear the solemn chants, they glimpse the smoke rising from the Vatican. But what if I told you that behind those stone walls, behind the prayers and pageantry, lies a process so secret, so strategic, so deeply symbolic, it's been hidden from most of the world for centuries. What really happens when the most powerful spiritual leader on earth passes away? Who holds the keys to the kingdom when the keys seem to have no holder? This is not just a story about religion. This is a story about legacy, power, and the weight of responsibility that transcends time. When the Pope dies, the world stands still. But inside the Vatican, a flurry of ancient rituals is immediately set into motion. A man is officially declared gone, not by a doctor, but by the one man with the authority to say so. His ring is destroyed, his voice silenced, his authority dissolved. But what comes next is even more mysterious. A secret meeting of the world's most powerful cardinals. A locked room, no phones, no connection to the outside world. This is not democracy. This is destiny by decision. And in that room, alliances are formed, silent prayers are whispered, and votes are cast again and again until a 2/3 majority brings forth the next spiritual emperor. Some think it's purely divine. Others know that politics, geography, age, and hidden agendas shape that smoke that rises from the chimney. Yes, white smoke means hope, but it also means someone has been chosen after a battle of minds, spirits, and visions. You're about to find out who really makes that decision, what really goes on in the conclave, why some men are quietly disqualified without a word, and why the next pope may have been prepared for decades without even knowing it. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you won't just understand how a new pope is chosen, you'll understand why it matters. You'll see what it reveals about leadership, timing, and how even in the most sacred of places, strategy walks hand in hand with spirituality. You'll see what it reveals about leadership, timing, and how even in the most sacred of places, strategy walks hand in hand with spirituality. There is a realm of power that is rarely seen, a sacred silence that surrounds the passing of the most influential spiritual leader on earth. When a pope dies, the world mourns, flags are lowered, bells toll across continents, and television screens are flooded with tributes. But behind the public mourning lies something far more intriguing, a carefully orchestrated sequence of rituals that have not changed in hundreds of years, a system rooted in tradition, soaked in symbolism, and wrapped in mystery. It starts in a room with no cameras, no media, no press releases. A single man is tasked with confirming that the Pope is truly gone. Not a doctor, not a politician, but the Camerlengo, the Chamberlain of the Holy Roman Church. His role is unlike any other. He approaches the lifeless body, and in an ancient ritual, he calls the Pope by his birth name 3 times. No response is expected, but it must be done. It's not about science. It's about closure, identity, and authority. Once it is confirmed that the Holy Father has passed, a series of deeply symbolic actions begin. The ring that once sealed edicts and declared divine authority, the ring of the fisherman, is destroyed. Why? Because the ring is power, it is access. And until it is broken, the power of the papacy could be forged or misused. It is a declaration to the heavens and the earth that the seat is truly empty, that the throne of Peter is vacant, and that changes everything. No emails are sent. No social media post declares what happens next. It's all governed by tradition so old that it's been followed by men in robes since before most nations even existed. The body is then prepared, not as a king would be, but as a servant of God. Robes of white and gold, symbols of purity and eternal glory, are chosen. And yet there is a weight to this process. Because while the body rests, the church begins to move. The Vatican enters a state called sede vacante, meaning the seat is vacant. It is a time of uncertainty, of anticipation, and of intense behind-the-scenes preparation. The Vatican is no longer led by one man, but by protocols. A shift in power occurs silently, with no headlines announcing it. But the rituals continue. Each of these ancient steps carries a message. The silence says something. The ceremonial tapping of the head says something. The destruction of the ring says something. And what they all say together is this. This is not just about the man, this is about the mission. Because the papacy is not just a role, it's a symbol of divine leadership. It's a seat that has guided millions for over 2 millennia. And when that seat is empty, the world doesn't just wait. They watch. They speculate. And they wonder who will rise next. But even more intriguing than who is how. And to understand that, you must first understand this. The rituals are not for show. They are spiritual and strategic. They are reminders that nothing in this process is random. From the moment the Pope takes his last breath, every act is a sign, every gesture is a code, every silence is loaded with meaning. You are not just witnessing a death, you are witnessing the beginning of something sacred, something powerful, and something that few truly understand. That's why you must keep watching. Because these ancient rituals are not just about honoring the dead, they are the keys to unlocking the future. When the Pope dies, the world believes the church pauses. But in truth, it shifts. Power doesn't die with the man, it relocates, repositions, and reveals itself in unexpected places. Most imagine the Vatican as a single figurehead, one man in white robes leading the faithful. But what few realize is that the true power of the Vatican has always been a structure, not a person. It's a kingdom of order and secrecy, where influence runs through corridors, not microphones. And when that throne is empty, the question isn't if there's power, it's who's holding it now. The instant the Pope is declared dead, the seat of spiritual command is locked. And from that moment on, no one man rules. Instead, the church is led by an interim guardian, the Camerlengo. While he cannot make theological decisions or appoint bishops, he holds the keys to the treasury, the communications, the management of Vatican City itself. He doesn't reign, but he regulates. Quietly, efficiently, with centuries of tradition backing his every move. But beneath the visible structure, there is another layer of power. One not defined by robes or rituals, but by relationships. Cardinals, archbishops, secretaries, diplomats, each with influence cultivated over years of service, global travel, and strategic alignment. These are the men who now begin the silent preparation for what's next. They know that in this window of vacancy, how one moves matters more than what one says. Every conversation, every handshake, every glance is a move on the world's most sacred chessboard. While the public sees reverence, the inner circle navigates relevance. And there is a reason most of this goes unseen, because influence that moves in silence is often the most effective. Power in the Vatican is not loud. It's not political in the way most people understand. It's ancient. It's deliberate. It's veiled. You see, this isn't just about choosing a successor. This is about preserving legacy while shaping the future. Those in power now are not thinking only of who is worthy, but of who will maintain the stability of 1 billion souls. Who can lead, unify, and protect the church from division, scandal, and pressure from the outside world. It's not just spiritual, it's strategic. Survival. And here's where it gets deeper. The people holding the power right now are often the very ones influencing who the next pope will be. They are not waiting for divine inspiration to fall like lightning. They are measuring character, background, language, geography, age. They are asking, who can reach Latin America? Who can withstand media fire? Who speaks to the youth? Who will defend doctrine without alienating progress? This is not heresy. It's reality. In the absence of a pope, the most powerful men in the Vatican begin to make decisions that echo into the future, not through announcements, but through whispers, not in public debates, but in private rooms. The church becomes quieter, but the influence becomes sharper, focused, intentional. And that's the truth most never hear. That behind the scenes of the world's most spiritual institution lies one of the most ancient, precise systems of influence still functioning today. Not corrupt, not chaotic, but complex and guarded. So the question isn't, what happens when the Pope dies? The real question is, who steps into the shadows of leadership when the spotlight goes dark? Because while the world mourns the loss of a leader, the church is already preparing the stage for the next. And in those hidden movements, true power is revealed. When the seat of the papacy is empty, all eyes turn to the Sistine Chapel. But what actually happens behind those locked doors is unlike any other election on earth. No debates, no campaigns, no public speeches, just silence, prayer, and one of the most secretive selection processes in history. This is the conclave, the gathering of cardinal electors under the vaulted ceiling of Michelangelo's masterpiece. But they're not just here to vote, they're here to witness, to discern, and to be part of a moment that will shape the direction of over 1 billion lives. And the world is not invited. Once the cardinals enter the chapel, the doors are sealed, literally. Iron bars are drawn shut and the outside world is cut off. No phones, no messages, no contact. This isn't just about privacy, it's about purity of decision. The church believes that this process must be free from influence, manipulation, and interference. It must be, as they say, guided by the Holy Spirit alone. But make no mistake, this is not a mystical free-for-all. There are rules, there is order, there is process. Every vote is handwritten, every ballot is cast with reverence and secrecy. The ballots are then collected, counted, and burned twice a day. The smoke that rises from the chapel chimney is not a quaint tradition. It's the only public signal of progress. Black smoke means no consensus. White smoke means the world has a new pope. But it's what happens before the smoke that holds the real story. In those hours of isolation, intense discussions unfold. The cardinals, men who've served across continents, endured persecution, led churches through war, scandal, and revival, bring more than theology into the room. They bring perspective, they bring experiences, and most of all, they bring intent. Each vote is a reflection of what the church needs now: strength, compassion, vision, discipline. Every name that rises is more than a candidate. It's a direction, a message, a signal of what the church is preparing to face next. Some cardinals enter the conclave with expectations. Some are seen as favorites. But history has proven something again and again. The man who walks into the conclave as pope rarely walks out as pope. The Holy Spirit, or perhaps the quiet unity of over 100 seasoned minds, often chooses the unexpected. And when the smoke finally turns white and the bells begin to ring, the world rejoices. But what most people miss is this: that decision was not made in a moment. It was forged in prayer, in silence, and in the sacred tension between tradition and change. The conclave isn't just where a pope is chosen. It's where the future of the church is carved in silence, behind closed doors, by men who know the weight of what they carry. And the only proof that it happened at all is the smoke. When a new pope is chosen, most people see it as a spiritual event, a divine decision, a holy outcome. But underneath the sacred language and solemn rituals, something more complex is at play, something very few dare to acknowledge. The selection of a pope is not just about prayer. It's about prophecy, politics, and global strategy. And when these forces intersect, history is shaped. The church does not exist in a vacuum. It is a spiritual body, yes, but also a global power. And every pope becomes a representative not only of heaven, but of earth, a bridge between faith and the real world. So when it comes time to choose a successor, the conversation becomes much bigger than personal holiness or theological wisdom. It becomes a question of timing, alignment, and influence. Is the world at peace or in crisis? Is the church facing scandal or seeking renewal? Is there a need for reform or reinforcement? These are not shallow questions, they are strategic ones. Because the man chosen to lead the church will also speak to nations, shape global values, and influence generations to come. And this is where prophecy becomes part of the process, not as superstition, but as a deep awareness of divine timing. Many within the church believe that the rise of a new pope often aligns with divine signals, moments of disruption, cultural shifts, or global turning points. The cardinals are not just choosing a man, they are aligning a message. The message of what God may be saying to the world right now, but layered on top of prophecy is something more human: politics. Not the politics of left and right, but the politics of priorities. Different cardinals come from different regions, each facing unique struggles. Some represent persecuted churches, others lead flocks in secularized nations. Some advocate for tradition, others push for reform. Each brings a perspective, each brings an agenda. And it's in this invisible negotiation where faith meets foresight that the future pope is found. But perhaps the most hidden element of all is strategy, global strategy. The Vatican may be a spiritual center, but it is also a sovereign entity. It watches the world closely. It understands the power of image, diplomacy, and moral authority. Choosing a pope from Latin America sends a different message than choosing one from Africa, Asia, or Europe. Choosing a younger leader hints at long-term vision. Choosing an older one suggests stabilization and transition. These decisions echo beyond the church. Governments watch, media speculate, faithful hearts pray, and the world waits, sometimes hoping, sometimes fearing. What kind of leadership will emerge? Because at the end of the day, the selection of a pope is not just about religion, it's about resonance. It's about placing the right voice in a seat of global impact, a voice that must carry not only the truth of faith, but the wisdom to navigate the storms of the world. This is not conspiracy, this is not myth, this is how deep leadership works, at the intersection of heaven's timing and the world's needs. When the pope dies, the world sees mourning. The faithful weep, tributes pour in, and headlines speak of an ending. But within the walls of the Vatican, something entirely different is happening. Beneath the grief lies a strange and sacred tension, because while the world slows down, the Vatican begins to awaken. It is in death that the church comes alive in a different way. Hidden mechanisms centuries old begin to turn. Rituals rooted in history, tested by time and turmoil, are set in motion with precision and reverence. The death of a pope is not chaos, it is choreography. And that choreography reveals something powerful. The church is designed to endure. Most people think of the pope as the centerpiece of Catholicism, and in many ways, he is. But the strength of the church does not rest on a single man. It rests on a system, a legacy, a living organism that knows how to transition power without tearing itself apart. While governments can collapse in leadership crises and corporations scramble when CEOs fall, the Vatican does something extraordinary. It honors the man and simultaneously prepares for the future without missing a step. From the moment the Pope breathes his last, tradition steps forward to lead. Bells toll, candles are lit, and the Novem Dials, 9 days of official mourning, begins. But alongside the prayers and processions, preparations are underway. Cardinals begin arriving from across the globe. The Camerlengo verifies the death and seals the papal apartments. Documents are secured, and administrative authority is quietly handed over. The church does not stumble, it shifts. And what most don't realize is that this moment is one of the church's most vital. It is not a time of decay, it is a time of decision. For it is only in transition that the true strength of a system is tested. And the Vatican has passed this test for centuries, again and again, with unwavering continuity. But it goes even deeper. When the Pope dies, something awakens in the hearts of those who serve. Cardinals, bishops, theologians, they begin to reflect not only on the legacy of the one who passed, but on what comes next. The questions become unavoidable. Where are we now? What must we protect? What must we change? In this sacred pause, clarity often rises. It is a moment where vision becomes more important than routine, where the global church takes a breath and asks, what kind of leadership does this generation need? It's not just an institutional awakening, it's a spiritual one. And perhaps this is where the true power of the church lies, not in its wealth, not in its buildings, not even in the charisma of one man, but in its ability to transform endings into beginnings, to take loss and turn it into leadership, to face death and emerge with direction. Because the death of a pope does not mark the end of the church. It marks the continuation of its mission, a mission that has survived emperors, revolutions, and scandals. A mission that continues to rise when the world expects it to fall. So while the world watches for headlines, the Vatican listens for something deeper. It's not the end. It's not even the pause. It's the awakening of an institution that has learned how to lead through loss, how to find strength in stillness, and how to emerge from the shadow of death with the torch still burning. The throne may be empty, but the mission never sleeps. Most of the world sees only the surface, a puff of white smoke, the ringing of bells, a name announced from the balcony, and a sea of people cheering in St. Peter's Square. It seems simple, peaceful, even predictable, but what happens in that moment is far more significant than most realize. A transfer of immense unseen power has just taken place, not only within the walls of the Vatican, but across the world. The Pope is more than a religious figure. He is a head of state, a diplomat, a global moral compass. His voice reaches places politicians cannot. His presence alone can stabilize regions, influence governments, and rally millions. When a new pope is chosen, it's not just a new leader for Catholics. It's a new player in the global arena. And the shift is subtle but seismic. Behind the scenes, world leaders take notice. Ambassadors recalibrate their strategies. News agencies scramble to assess what kind of man has risen to power. Is he conservative or progressive? A traditionalist or reformer? Is he likely to challenge global powers or work alongside them? Because history has shown that one papal message can shake markets, redirect political debates, and shift global conversations around poverty, war, climate, and justice. But while the world analyzes headlines, something deeper is occurring. The spiritual authority of the Pope isn't just symbolic, it's real, and it carries weight in the hearts and minds of over 1 billion people. His words become doctrine, his gestures become global signals, and his silence can speak louder than sermons. The world often misunderstands this power because it doesn't come with military force or economic might. It comes with trust, influence, and the weight of history. And this new pope doesn't rise alone. He inherits a network, the Vatican's vast and deeply embedded influence in education, media, charity, and diplomacy. This network doesn't just respond to him, it amplifies him. Through schools, hospitals, missions, and global partnerships, his message reaches villages and cities alike, and with each papal transition, the direction of that message shifts, creating ripple effects that most people never see. So while the world may be looking for drama or change, what's really happening is recalibration. The spiritual axis of the planet adjusts, even if ever so slightly. And those who pay attention know the arrival of a new pope is not just a page turned in a religious book. It's the quiet turning of the wheel of history. What the world misses is that in the stillness of that Vatican balcony, in the pause, before the name is spoken, something powerful has already begun. A new era, a new influence, a new voice that will echo across borders, beliefs, and generations. And it all begins not with thunder, but with smoke.